Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another...
My God! It's time for DLC!
Wow. That was so epic, I don't know what to do now.
That's a way to start an episode.
That's a perfect way to start an episode.
Yep.
Ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of DLC. My name is Gerard Khalil, I'm the completionist, and as always, back. I'm so glad to have you back, Greg. We got the mediocreist, Greg Wilmot, back in action.
That's right. I was gone, but now I'm not gone.
You're here.
So I'm here.
You're here, and you're back. It's good to have you back.
Yes.
Our chat moderator, as always, at least for 3 out of the 4 times we've done this now, we got Soa. Say hi, Soa.
Hey, guys.
Poor Soa's been stripped of his moderation tools in the Twitch chat because it's just been misbehaving.
QQ. All the QQs. All of them.
It's okay. It's okay. Hopefully Twitch will figure it out. Twitch will figure it out. But in any case, guys, before we begin, quick little thing in case you haven't figured it out by now. This episode, as well as all episodes of DLC, are brought to you in part by K-Zombie Radio. They are partnering with us so that you guys can actually hear this on iTunes and Stitcher and all those other indie audio, radio, podcast type things you can download stuff to. But our topic for today is...
And remember, when it is on the zombie thing, it's translated into zombie too, so you're just going to hear a bunch of grunts and brains.
Exactly. And that you actually need like
Keep that in.
You need a zombie app to figure that one out. So,
anyways, the topic today is
film adaptations of video games / film tie-in video games. This actually is super important to me because for those of you guys who don't know a little about me, is I went to school for film, and I love video games. I love movies, 2 of my favorite passions, and one of my goals in life has been to one day bring these 2 things together and make something that's fantastical. But there's been a plague among us in the Hollywood community, and that's that they're creating these video game adaptations of film adaptations of video games. I speak so well today. I'm good.
Your teacher teached you to spoke gooder than you used to.
My teacher.
Yeah, I think the main problem is there's quite a few disappointments in the world of video game film adaptations.
Oh yes, let's talk.
It's very hard to bridge that gap.
Let's go back in time. Let's get in a time machine. And I know everyone was like this when I was younger, but let's talk about one of the first. For those of you guys who don't know, I'm gonna link dump below in the description. But for all of you guys in the chat,
I think I know where we're going with this. Are we talking about Mario Brothers right now?
That's exactly what we're talking about. For those of you guys who don't know, that is a list of games right there that we're going to be going over and talking about in terms of the progression of film games, game things. So our first one that we can talk about, which I think all of us have seen, is the abomination known as Super Mario Brothers, released May 28th of 1993. Man, Greg, we must have been, what, 5 years old, 6 years old when this movie came out?
Yeah, I remember watching it when I was a kid, and my brother and I, we played a lot of Game Boy Super Mario, and we really loved it. And then we watched the movie, and we were like, what the hell is this?
What is... I think I saw this with...
Why is Yoshi... What? That's Yoshi?
I didn't know... This is Jurassic Park Yoshi Edition? I had no idea.
What is all the goop?
So,
why is there so much goo?
It's like... Oh, and also, apparently, Mario's last name is Mario. So there's Mario and Luigi Mario. That never made any sense to me. There's actually a pretty in-depth documentary behind-the-scenes thing and articles all about the process of Super Mario Brothers and how it was just like a huge disaster from the get-go. Just working with it and getting it in production-wise, and like the writer and director of the film were like a man and wife couple that just ruined the movie.
Well, I don't know if they ruined the movie.
Ruin the game.
But I think the movie was probably just doomed to begin with because it's such a departure.
Yeah.
And there's really nothing in the film that makes you go, yeah. this is Super Mario Brothers, other than a few of the names.
Yeah. Mini spoiler: if you guys are gonna go see the Amazing Spider-Man, when you watch that, I want you to think about Super Mario Brothers towards the end of the movie. Just think you'll instantly know what I'm talking about when you get towards the end of it.
It was just a few years ago that they made the first Spider-Man.
Too soon. Too soon. It was about 11, 12 years ago. It's pretty.
See, side trip with that. I think, in my opinion, that they did such a fantastic job with the first Spider-Man film with Tobey Maguire and Willem Dafoe. I mean, come on, how can you make that better?
To be fair,
And
after seeing it, I have to say Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone are really great on screen together. They bring so much to what this romance could be, but other than that, everything else is just like we've heard it before. So let's move down this list, Greg, as we have. Hope you guys have opened it up. Double Dragon came out next, which
I remember playing that game a lot.
you got a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, a flat out 0. I never saw this film.
I think something that we can address, I'm looking at the list now, is most of these films didn't even make what their budget was.
Oh yes.
I think a fantastic one here is Postal, which was released in July of 2007. Its budget was $15 million, and it grossed $146,000.
Well, let's do a little quick side note right here, real quickly. The reason why Postal did so poorly is that it's actually a reason why most video game adaptations went down south. It's because of a director named Uwe Boll. This gentleman right here is responsible for a lot of games that you actually see on this list. For instance, these are all of the game adaptations that he's done. House of the Dead, Alone in the Dark, Alone in the Dark 2, Blood Rain, Blood Rain 2, Blood Rain 3, In the Name of the King, a Dungeon Siege Tale, Postal, and Far Cry. Those are just some of the video games that he's done, video game films. And
all of them didn't do very well.
all of them failed. Just awful. He's like, everyone doesn't like this guy. Poor guy. He just got to stop making bad movies. But one thing that you kind of one of the interesting things on this list is as it goes down, the budgets get bigger. So they're assuming that, Hollywood's assuming, if we throw a big budget at this movie, bigger than the ones before it, that we're going to generate more cash from it. Because it would be well done, if you want to call it that.
Well, the interesting thing is, two of the biggest budgets, they're the ones that gross the most.
Yeah.
And probably the reason why their budget was so big is because they had big-name actors. So the first one is Lara Croft, which, as we all know, what's-her-face is in it? I suddenly forgot her name. Angelina Jolie. So most of the $115 million budget was because of her. But then that film grossed $274 million, probably because of her as well. Mm-hmm. Because people wanted to see the boobies. and then the next one that has the biggest is Prince of Persia, which the budget was $200 million. And because of Jake Gyllenhaal, that was in 2010, so he was super huge actor man at the time. And then that grossed $335 million. So
those are some of the most successful ones. But we've got some in-betweens to talk about. We got some in-betweens there. For instance, the Mortal Kombat franchise, surprisingly successful for how it was back in the day. Now, in 1995, its budget was $18 million, the first movie, and it grossed $122 million. That's pretty successful considering the backgrounds of what went into that film. The Street Fighter film that we all saw. With Jean-Claude Van Damme as Colonel Guile, which was it was hilarious.
Well, I mean, we were there when the I guess I'll say it and we can bleep it out. The storm about Mortal Kombat coming out as a game and just how everybody was up in arms about how violent this video game was. So it was the talk of the town. It was in the news everywhere. So then when a movie came out about that game that was so controversial, I think that's where a lot of their money came from.
Yeah.
Then when they made their second one, they didn't really make all that much more.
Yeah, the budget was bigger, but it didn't generate enough of a response. What's interesting is that I'm trying to find the rating on the game or on this movie. I don't see like a PG or a R rating because immediately when a film adaptation,
It's probably PG-13.
yeah, it had to have been because immediately when the studios put a PG-13 ranking on a video game film, you really limit your audience. With Resident Evil being the only real exception to that. So let's see what else we got here. Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. I saw this and I hated every minute of it.
I remember when it came out, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world because it was, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was the first feature-length CGI film.
One of the first ones, at least, and it looked fantastic.
Oh, yeah. I
it-
remember watching it after playing Final Fantasy games and being like, why'd you call this Final Fantasy?
The plot had, I mean, the weird thing is that it had like weird alludes, like to, Final Fantasies. Like there were some recurring names and characters that kind of were right there, but it didn't really. It was whatever.
I just thought it looked really amazing.
Yes, yes.
For when that came out, let's see, when did that come out? In 2001.
2001. Well, I mean, at that point we've had some Pixar stuff, so it wasn't. It was the first kind of non-Pixar CG kind of thing that did well.
Video game kind of thing.
Yeah. And then of course we have one of the big things that were responsible for why these came back and around was the first Resident Evil movie. Now, as a kid, I loved Resident Evil, the first film. I thought it was scary. I thought it had a lot of action in it, and I loved a lot of the subtleties they put in it with the mansion and the hive and all that stuff. But my biggest problem is that at one point, my biggest problem is they brought in Alice, this completely original character who had nothing to do with any of the Resident Evil franchise at this point, and
But it worked.
It worked surprisingly well. That was what was weird. And then they made the second and third and fourth, and now the fifth one's coming out in October of this year, September of this year. And it's bizarre because as they further the story of Alice and what she's doing, they're starting to integrate more and more of the video games within it. But while they're integrating it, they're also straying away from the video games. So they're branching off almost new and original storylines that don't need to exist, but they also want to create fan service by bringing in characters like Leon and Chris and Claire and Ada's in this new one too. It's kind of this weird, and Wesker. It's kind of this weird pendulum shift as to what really qualifies as good fan service when it comes to video game films.
To be honest, I've only seen the first one, so.
That
That's as far as I got.
That first one and the second one are the closest you're going to get to an actual plot line in the video games. They get the third and fourth ones just stray so far out of order that it's just like it's not the same movie anymore, same game, let alone.
Now they just want to make money.
And look at these numbers here. Resident Evil, the first one, with a budget of $33 million, made $102 million. And when it came back to do Resident Evil Apocalypse, $45 million, generated $129 million. Like, in my opinion, these films are god-awful, but again, Sony spent...
And then Extinction costed $45 million, made $147 million.
And then the new one that came out 2 years ago, what was it? Was that the new one?
Costed $60,000, and it made almost $60 million, and it made almost $300 million.
Yeah, it's like the better the film, the better the worse the story, the better the film. Is that what I'm getting at this point? Especially when it comes to Resident Evil, because it's quite sad. There is one game franchise that I actually enjoyed the movie, but everyone hated it because of what it was Doom. Everyone hated Doom the movie.
I didn't see that one with
Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
I thought it was Osama bin Diesel.
No. It was Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I know you guys know that I like The Rock, but...
They're the same guy.
Same guy. I have to say, there's a great FPS sequence in there that was really reminiscent of the Doom franchise. That was like the best part of the movie. Everything else just was like, brr. They based it off of Doom 3, so it kind of had that Doom 3 feel.
So Doom actually lost money.
It did. It almost
Costed $60 million to make, and it only made 55
So it
million.
made yeah, 20% Rotten Tomatoes. Um, pretty bad.
Yeah, that's pretty much all the Rotten Tomato scores for these. The highest one is
Uh,
Final Fantasy, actually,
Final Fantasy is the highest one at 43%. That's
because it was so different from anything else that was out at the time.
yeah,
Is what I'm assuming why it
yeah.
got such.
Well, what's interesting too is that if you look up a little higher, there have been so many the cartoon slash CGI films that these companies release themselves always do millions times better. Like Final Fantasy Advent Children, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children was a great piece of artwork to look at. Resident Evil Degeneration was again another great piece of work to look at. Just kind of when they decided to go down to that, CG. CG cartoon route. Pokemon the movie, Street Fighter 2 the animated movie. Those did relatively well. Obviously because it fit more with the style of the games and more with the audience. Yeah, I'm looking at the Box Office Mojo generation charts. This is also more numbers for you guys who are interested in what we're looking at, so you can be a part of the experience. Just be a part of it. Again, that's in the description below. The number one movie of all time was Lara Croft, followed by Prince of Persia, and Pokemon the first movie, surprisingly enough, was a big hit.
Did you see that one in theaters?
I did.
I remember when it came out, it was pretty crazy, but unfortunately at the time I was no longer into Pokemans.
That movie was my last like real thing in mainstream Pokemon. I didn't see that's kind of when I stopped, both in the games and in the cartoon experience.
I probably stopped like a year to 6 months before.
So before we move on to the universe, I want to talk about 3 film adaptations that make me sad because I had such high hopes. In fact, I had friends that dragged me to the theater because I refused to see them. Because, one fun fact about me, my goal in life was, like, as a kid until now, I wanted to make these movies a real thing. I was, like, set, when I was a kid, I had made little dumb, like, dumb little poster cards and frames of, like, shots that I wanted to make out of these movies. And the biggest disappointment for me was Max Payne. Oh, man, Marky Mark and the abomination of what that movie was. Surprisingly enough, it didn't do too bad. Let me see this list. Where's this list at? I can't see.
It's number 11.
Number 11 in this list. It did really well. It was an actual success. $35 million was its budget, and it grossed $85 million. Not bad for a film adaptation. They must have been really happy. They alluded to a sequel, and the cool thing is that the atmosphere of Max Payne was actually believable. It actually was really solid. The acting was horrible. The casting was horrible. The script was horrible. The plot wasn't that far off to the movie, but they really focused on this whole drug ordeal of, like, Valkyries, this drug that slows down time, and you see angel wings and this kind of stuff. And that is kind of what they allude to in the game. Very bizarre approach as to going into it. And there was the funny thing about it is that Max Payne was revolutionary at the time because of bullet time. At the time The Matrix came out. And so when we had a game that mirrored what The Matrix was doing, with slowing down time and diving and shooting enemies, that was something we all really loved because The Matrix had been out, and we were like, "Oh, I want to do it that we do in The Matrix." And there's only
Enter the Matrix. That was a good game.
Yeah, that came out a few years after Max Payne did, and that game was really fun too. But that one thing was that there's only one shot in that movie where it's like bullet time slow motion. And it's not even that courageous because it's just Marky Mark slowly leaning back with the gun and shooting in slow motion. It was pretty depressing. That's number 1 on my list. Number 2 was Resident Evil. I really wanted to make a Resident Evil movie that captured the atmosphere of the mansion, because the mansion was where it was at. And the whole hive thing, it was okay, but it was too far removed from the mansion for me. And the number 3 had to have been Prince of Persia. Jake Gyllenhaal, no disrespect, bro, but I don't know what was going on there.
I just want to bring up real quick, I was seeing some chat about Scott Pilgrim, which wasn't a video game adaptation or anything.
Yes.
But it did blend in the video game aspects really well. Like, that was such a nostalgic movie watching it. Just, how many years ago was that? Just like a couple of years ago now or something?
About 2-3 years ago.
And just hearing all the video game sounds, I think that they did an amazing job. Even though that, I think, was a flop, too.
It was a flop, but it was a flop for all of the wrong reasons. Scott Pilgrim did poorly because of Universal not knowing how to promote it. They didn't know how to advertise the movie. They didn't know, like, they didn't place it at a good time because they put it right between. It released the exact same weekend as The Expendables and as Eat, Pray, Love, which is like fantastic. You've now divided the male demographic to go see Expendables, and the female demographic that would be slightly related is now going to Eat, Pray, Love. And so now the only thing you can see is, you know, Scott Pilgrim in between. And all of us who saw it loved it. I saw it all the time. I saw it 11 times in theaters. Greg and I got our DVD signed and poster signed by the cast of Scott Pilgrim. That's how you do a video game film. How they did it. That's how you do it. That's why I loved it. It fused it so well together.
So let's touch on the opposite and video game adaptations from films.
Okay. So
with the sigh of disgust.
All right. So there are some games out there. Okay.
There's the best one, which is Harry Potter and the
Chamber of Secrets for the Game Boy Advance. Doesn't get any better than that, Greg. That's the.
I hate that game. I really hate that game.
I'm right there with you. There's something with video games.
Can't stand it.
Film companies thinking that's the weird thing, is that film companies know that their games will sell well. They know that, you know, if they make a game for Toy Story 3, it's going to sell.
And most of them were crap too, because they were just to, you know, make money off of what the film was.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really the only game I could ever think that was very good in regards to like a tie-in had to have been GoldenEye 007, which is kind of a weird balance, because that game was really focused on multiplayer, and that game became famous because of the multiplayer.
Right. Yes.
It was very iconic, and they even tried to rehash it in recent weeks, and it just didn't really bring it out. Spider-Man 2 is also another good one, where they got that open world kind of GTA feel mixed in with Spider-Man. But other than that, most of these video game tie-ins are really bad, and it's kind of depressing that they do that. It's, you know, I cry for these game companies because they release these games. The sad thing is that they do well. It's because there's so many kids who are like, Mom, Dad, I want that game. I want that game. I want that game. And they'll get it. And that's you know, it works.
There's a good point. Kingdom Hearts bringing in the movie characters from Disney.
Kingdom Hearts is interesting because it's a new storyline, brand new storyline, but it brings in all these great elements that we all grew up with. You know, King Mickey, Donald and Goofy, Aladdin, all those things. And that's why that worked, because it was an original concept that integrated existing franchises and properties, including Final Fantasy franchise, which was kind of weird. When we were younger, we had companies such as Capcom and Disney Interactive that really focused on creating great original property or existing properties. You know, Aladdin for the Genesis, Aladdin for the Super Nintendo. Two different games, really awesome. You know, even things like, what was it, Mickey's Magical Quest. That was phenomenal. Lion King. Even the Toy Story game for the Super Nintendo. There was something that was really fantastical about those games because they were developed by game companies that had, you know, a pre-existing reputation for these games. You know, I reviewed Goof Troop. That was a phenomenal game. I really enjoyed it. It was a good game. But nowadays you have games
it's a
like...
good video, too.
Yeah, it was. But nowadays you have things integrated such as Thor and Iron Man 2, and all these, you know, Brave.
No
and
good. No good.
No good. No, just why waste our time? Why waste our money? We as the older demographic are not going to fall for that. Maybe that's the point, is that they're not aiming for us, they're aiming for the smaller kids. Maybe.
Well, I think It's like what we were talking about with handheld games and apps. They're just trying to make a quick buck.
Yeah,
Because a lot of those, they seem so thrown together.
they do. And they have the potential to be great.
Yeah.
That's the sad thing, is that you play these games and you're like, I almost want to like this game. I almost want to. The problem is the formula is they make a game that matches exactly what the movie is. So you're playing the plot of the movie within a game. So if you haven't seen the movie but you want to buy it, it's like you're going to ruin the game for yourself, the movie for yourself if you do that. Before our commercial break, we were talking.
My God! It's time to take questions from the audience.
That's exactly what we're gonna do. Before the commercial break, we were talking about video game and film adaptations and film/game tie-ins to franchises. Before we take some calls, actually no, we'll take care of it after we take some calls. We're gonna go ahead and hear from some
I was about
audience.
to put the glasses back on and say, my God, it's not time for questions yet.
It still
But-
works.
But here, I'll
Go for
my
it.
God, it's still time for questions.
It's still time for questions.
It's still time.
It's still time. So we're gonna go. We're gonna go ahead and take some phone calls from our audience, and our first audience member up on the chop block, if you will, is Avery. Avery, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
So Avery, tell us, what is your opinion on film adaptations for video games and or film tie-in to video games?
Well, yeah, for the most part, they are not doing it correctly. There are some movies that will give you hope that they will do good. And about the Prince of Persia, for example, I watched the movie first and then played the game afterwards. And I really liked both, and I was able to separate them so that they didn't affect how much I liked the other one, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the one movie that really got it better more than any other one was the original Pokemon movie. As a kid, that was something else, especially when Ash actually died.
Oh, that's right, he did in that movie.
Yeah, he died, and then all the Pokemon's tears brought him back to life.
Oh, that's right.
What?
Remember, that was in the first movie.
No, I told you I never saw it, buddy.
Oh.
Never saw it.
Well,
Man, Pokemon had some deep themes.
well,
Of course, they've become crap.
Greg,
That series has gone too far.
Greg, you've had 12 years to see that movie. You've had
Oh,
12
no,
years.
I don't care. Anyways, go on.
And also,
They're crap
it's not just the video games that get bad movie adaptations. For an example, probably one of the most recent examples was the Avatar: The Last Airbender movie. It's like the series itself was so amazing, but the movie just made you want to stab yourself.
Just,
Well, it's M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong. God, I saw The Happening, and I wanted my money back so bad. But that is a 14-hour conversation for another day, so... Anything else before we take the next caller?
One word. Bears!
you got me.
Well said.
Well said.
Well said.
Well said. Avery, thank you for calling today.
Thanks for
Thank
calling.
you.
All right, moving up down our list of callers is Carrie.
Wait, did you say moving up down our list?
Moving up down. Damn it, Greg.
Moving up down our list.
Moving on up down our list. Got to moving it up. Our next caller is Carrie Ann. Carrie Ann, how are you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you guys?
We're doing
Doing
fantastic. Your accent is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, how'd you learn to do that one? Did you study for a long time?
Just years of living in Scotland.
Oh, okay. That'll do it, huh?
If I go to Scotland, will I learn that accent? Is that
You probably will, actually.
Be there for
A lot of my relatives that live down south pick it up really quickly.
Oh,
Buying my
Oh.
plane ticket now.
I know, right?
But you can stay here.
It's like we're hanging out with Turbo Drive Live right now. Your lady Turbo Drive Live.
Brilliant.
That's
My new
awesome.
username.
So, Carrie Ann, tell us about your experience with film adaptations of video games and also tie-in games for movies. What is your opinion on it?
Well, as you've been saying, a lot of them are downright awful. Like in the case of like the Mario Brothers movie, when I first seen that, like yourselves, I was like, "This isn't Mario. What are you doing?
Yeah.
You've ruined my favourite game of all time." But in a weird way, it actually became one of my guilty pleasures. I would just sit and watch it and riff it constantly.
Yeah, well, that's like I would watch it to try and figure out what was going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, how could they do this?
Exactly. Another one that I find a guilty pleasure is actually an Uwe Boll movie, House of the Dead. It's so wrong in so many ways, but just my favourite parts in it are just the scenes where it's like they're walking down the corridors and they're shooting the zombies as they pop out of them. And I love the fact that Doom did that as well. So when I seen that, I was like, ah, brilliant! So, it just
So it felt like the video game, essentially.
pretty much, yeah.
You, your accent, I have to say it, it's been in the back of my mind. Your accent just reminds me of the movie Brave.
Alright.
Yeah, well, obviously because
I've not seen
the
it.
main character's from Scotland, so that works.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, one of my
I
favourite
like-
comedians, Billy Connolly's in it, so I can't wait to see it.
wait, you're one
I
of your
like how it's like, yeah, call in and we'll talk to you about the topic of the thing. Hey, your accent.
Yes.
Oh, that's great about your opinions, but
Showstopper.
you have an accent. I don't know if you notice this.
Yes.
I can notice it.
Well, what about what do you think about the tie-ins? Like, like you have are your boys old enough to play games yet?
Well, they're about 20 months old, and my son Sam actually got his first trophy a couple of days ago. I know, it's kind of mad. We bought Cars 2 game for him, which actually isn't that bad. I was quite surprised how good it was, but he discovered the jump button, and he started jumping, and he pressed it so many times that it actually came up with a trophy for jumping a number of times. So, I was quite proud of him that day.
You have a Wii gamer on your hand.
Definitely.
That's awesome.
Well, so I guess there's the video game from a movie, the adaptation, and hey, at least somebody's having fun with it. So I guess
Exactly.
that's good.
You got a trophy. There you go.
Yeah.
One of my favourites that I've played throughout the entire series was Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
I know you don't like it, I know. But actually, I don't know what it was about it. It was just, I think because you were going through the films but also could do your own thing as well. It was the whole open world. That
So are you gonna get the Wonder Book then?
actually.
You are. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
again, for my boys. For my
there you
boys.
go.
So, because I think they'll enjoy it. But in the case of the Harry Potter ones, what failed for me was the last two games, because they turned them into first-person shooters.
Oh, really?
It was the worst thing they'd ever done. At first, when I played them, I thought, oh, they've changed developer or something like that, but I checked and they hadn't. And
So it's
it
like-
made me so angry.
First person, like you're casting the wand from.
Yeah, you basically see the hand on the screen with the wand, and all you're going is zap, zap, zap. It is the worst thing ever. It just
Well,
makes it
that's
so
like-
generic.
So many games these days. I mean, first-person shooters make so much money. So
I know.
that's really where they were going
It's
with.
strange that I think those games flopped. Well, in the UK anyway.
Well, that's the unfortunate truth is that they're not making games anymore for us. They're making games for the money.
Exactly. It's,
So,
Yeah. Which
And
is
to
a whole
think
other
that-
conversation there.
yeah. I mean, to think of all the games that were out at the beginning, like, not at the beginning, but like years ago on the NES and everything, like the ones that Capcom made, for example, like Goof Troop, DuckTales, or even Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, which was my favourite of all time. It just, seeing what they're making nowadays, it's like an insult to those games.
Right, yeah, those ones were a hell of a lot of fun. Even Goof Troop's like 20 minutes long, but it's 20 minutes of awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I had more fun playing Goof Troop than I think any other like mainstream like 3D game I played in a while when I reviewed it.
Yeah.
It just was so much fun.
In fact, I think the last game, like movie tie-in game that I played several times in a row, was Lion King.
Oh
I
wow.
actually played that about 5 times in a row because I enjoyed it so much and got through it so quickly.
You mean for the Genesis or Super Nintendo?
Genesis.
Oh my god, I hate the giraffe heads and
Oh no! Oh, they were so annoying.
Yeah.
and
Worst level in the game.
and even just the
Game.
perfect jump in between the double jump. That double jump is
Oh.
so hard.
Oh, I know. No, my fiance
Alright.
just brought up a good point as well. What was it again, sir?
Super Empire Strikes Back.
Super Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, Super Star
It's not one
Wars.
I've played myself, but he loves it.
They're so good. They're
Yeah.
so good. See, there was a time where movie tie-ins were great games at some
Yeah.
point, you know?
And then at those times, like video game, the expectations weren't nearly as big as they are now. They weren't like
Yeah.
huge blockbuster things where they had midnight releases and all that stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot more weight put on them.
I guess that's true, but that doesn't mean you can't create a simplistic game that's still fun from, you know, those existing properties.
Well, they probably spent too much time on making it look good, so it's not any fun to play.
I guess that's true. So, Carrie Ann, thank you for speaking with us today. Are there any
No
last
problem.
thoughts you have before we move on?
Really just one other film that I was thinking about was actually Dante's Inferno, the animated.
Ooh, Dante's Inferno.
I loved the game and I loved the film because I played the game first. And it was my fiance that seen the movie one day and just snapped it up. Just, loved every minute of it.
Now, when you say Dante's Inferno, do you mean like the animated Dante's Inferno that they
Yeah.
did?
Yeah.
That was excellent.
I liked the way it was set up like the Animatrix as well, with just the different animators.
Oh yes.
Beatrice!
That was my fiance, I don't know what she shouted.
That was awesome. That was awesome.
Nice.
He tends to do that.
Well, thanks for talking to us.
Yeah, thanks for calling in, Carrie Ann.
No problem, thank you.
All the chortles.
So many chortles. And our last caller to talk to us today is Zach. Zach, how you doing today?
I'm good. How about you guys?
Doing pretty swellerific, as Greg would say.
Doing great.
All right.
So take it away. What are your thoughts on film adaptations of video games and vice versa?
Well, I mean, most of the games that got actually adapted into feature-length movies have been kind of crappy, to be honest. But one of the things that actually got me really excited a couple years back was that 15-minute live-action Halo trailer. I freaked out when I saw that because it looked so cool. It got me really excited. I thought the movie was actually happening. And as of
Pulling
now,
your leg.
it's dead, and I'm saddened by that.
I think why it's such a letdown sometimes is because a video game usually takes many, many hours to beat. So you're emotionally invested in this game, if it's a good game, for X amount of time, and then you walk into the theater, and then you have really no more than 2 hours to blow away your expectations from that game that you put so much time into. So I can understand how it would be a difficult transition to film.
And I also think I heard somewhere they're actually in the works of making a full feature Mass Effect movie. But I think the problem with that, and I know Ubisoft ran into this with Assassin's Creed as a movie, was the game developers and the guys who actually wrote the story want full creative control. And the companies, I think it was Sony for one of them, weren't willing to give them full creative control because it would cost a bit more money.
That's a shame. That's a shame.
Bioware's not doing that with this movie. They're actually working very close with the movie producers and
Oh,
directors.
they are?
What company is producing the Mass Effect film?
I think it's, what was it, the Legendary
Yeah.
Pictures?
Legendary Pictures?
I think that's it, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And then Holly Conrad's helping with costume design, too. So that's
Oh,
pretty cool.
interesting.
I'm hoping they don't really mess that up because it's a series that I'm so emotionally invested into because the games were so incredibly well written that if they mess up the movie, I'm sure there's going to be riots.
Yeah, well, I think that's the problem is I have nothing to base this off of, but I can just assume that a lot of the people who either wrote these films or adapted the screenplay from the video games really had nothing to do with the production of the video game itself. I don't know if that's actually true, but it seems an awful lot like that because especially with Super Mario Brothers, they couldn't have had anything to do with the game. I mean, come on.
I've got a feeling Miyamoto wasn't on the set during the making of that movie.
Yeah. I kind of want to go watch it now.
Zach, do you have any last thoughts before we let you go?
Not really. I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, Zach, thank you for calling in today.
Thanks
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Now, before we go, Greg, there was one thing I want to talk about, and that was the possibility of the future.
Wait, hang on a sec.
Oh.
You have one more thought before we go?
One more thought, Greg.
All right, that's it. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure.
Oh. Yep, you're good. Take it away.
My thought was we're going to talk about real quickly the future of what is ahead for these films that are going to be coming out. We've heard rumors of a Halo film for the longest time. And we've heard rumors of a Bioshock film. Assassin's Creed now has been brought up. Obviously, we talked about...
The Legend of Zelda, that whole hoax.
Oh, that's right.
Led everybody on.
Yeah, Shadow of the Colossus is now possibly being made into a film with the director of Chronicle being involved with that. So the film...
So we'll finally find out if it is a girl or a boy.
We will finally find out.
Maybe. Maybe.
Is it possible to make a film and have it a great meshing of what we as gamers love into a median-like film? Is it possible? We still haven't seen that one film that will...
ThatOneFilm.com?
That one... Wait a minute. You tricked me.
Yeah, I think it can happen because the video game industry has just grown so much and people are going to learn from these past mistakes. I mean, it's such a short time frame because, what was it, Super Mario Brothers was released in 1993. Mm-hmm. So we haven't even been at video game movies for 20 years yet.
Yeah.
You know, that's a short period of time to perfect film.
Yeah.
So I think it'll happen. That's my opinion.
I think it can happen too. I just think it's a matter of dealing with particular, roadblocks. Companies holding up contracts, not wanting to work with one another, really understanding what name should be attached to who, and I think that Hollywood's going to stop it from happening, and I think that the rise of the indie films from gamers and fans are really working. You know, things like the Mortal Kombat franchise has now been rebooted and being made into a film in partnership with Machinima. Things like the Portal fan-made film. There's a lot of films out there that are being recreated from the ground up because these game companies refuse to let them, move on with it. So maybe through indie films we can move on. So,
yep.
All right, guys. Well, that's all the time we have for today here on another episode of DLC. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. For you guys in the chat right now, you can go ahead and start talking to us. We'll hang out a little bit for a little Q&A action. And please follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. I'm at JK Completes It. Greg over here is McSquaresville. And obviously I got Tumblr as well. Thank you very much to all...
I still don't even know what a Tumblr is.
I don't know, but we're going to figure it out soon, Greg. I'm almost ready.
Maybe in a couple of years.
In a couple of years we'll figure it out. So thank you so much for being our chat moderator. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem, man.
Yeah. Well,
thanks to all the guests, too.
Thank you all the guests for hanging out. And I think that's it. Greg, anything else you want to add?
Hang on.
Okay. Hold.
Bears!
And now for something different, guys.